Hi everyone, Brent Sebold here. I'm with Arizona State University Entrepreneurship and Innovation. So we've been at this for a while now. We have a very forward-thinking president, Michael Crow. He's given our leadership, our deans and our VPs a great deal of latitude to experiment in the space of entrepreneurship and innovation, and specifically in the space of venture development. And I've had the fortunate opportunity to be rolling up my sleeves and experimenting with some ways that we can develop ventures, not only student ventures from freshmen to PhDs, but also faculty-led ventures in all crazy disciplines, and then of course alumni startups as well, and community-based entrepreneurs. So what I want to talk to you about today is some of the experiments we've run in the realm of venture development in the broader context of entrepreneurship and innovation across the institution. So without further ado, I would assume I'm talking to a lot of colleagues here that have been playing in this space as well, so I'll just cut right through the chase. Dating back, our birth year here at ASU for entrepreneurship and innovation, kind of with a lot of gasoline being poured on the fire, is about 2005. But of course, we've been helping to develop ventures much longer than that within higher ed. Previous to 2005, our business school, like many business schools across the country, were doing a great deal of good work, with incubation programs, small business development center initiatives, in partnership with the federal government and the state government. So really what I want to do is kind of just rattle off some of the at least within the last decade or so, the three models that we've really leaned on to kind of catalyze a lot of the venture development work that we do, not only here at ASU, but I'm assuming at institutions that you might represent as well. So here they are, pretty straightforward. Student, they used to be very widely known as business plan competitions, or now startup competitions or innovation competitions, or new venture challenges, whatever you want to call it. So competitions. And then we've got kind of the legacy incubator model, which we'll get into, obviously. And then the accelerator model. So again, when we look at venture development within the very specific context of higher education, these are the kind of the three go-to models that we've explored and we've experimented with and we've practiced with, and what I want to share with you today is, we found some challenges affiliated with each one of these legacy models, and in identifying challenges affiliated with each of these models, of course, being entrepreneurial ourselves, we tried to work around those and develop mechanisms and processes to optimize the best components of each of these models for our unique context of higher ed and serving students, and really paying close attention to what our core competency is at the university, which is teaching and learning and research. So let's dive into each one of these, and then we'll drill down into each one, certain challenges affiliated with each one of these models, and how we might be able to advance a new model that serves our purpose as higher educators moving forward. So let's look at competitions first. So competitions tend to be sponsor or donor directed. We have many competitions here at ASU. I would assume at your institution you've got at least one donor or one industry sponsor that is really into a startup. He or she loves Shark Tank and loves the institution that he or she graduated from. They want to come back. Oftentimes these are alumni that want to, instead of maybe doing a scholarship for his or her constituents in their academic discipline, maybe they want to take a twist on that and give some seed funding away to aspiring entrepreneurs. Oftentimes students, but in some cases faculty and community-led startups as well. They also, for us on the academic side, on the administration side, they tend to be pretty labor intensive, because when you're doing a competition, you have to work obviously with the donor and the sponsor, really just crystallize the donor intent, all the logistics. Then we move into the marketing phase, get the word out. Hey, we've got all this money, come and try to win it. Then there's the application process, the judging process, and hopefully there's a fun pitch opportunity there. But if it goes well for the first one, it's a double-edged sword because a lot of work, a lot of great outputs on all sides of the equation. But then you've got other folks that want to get involved, and generally, in our experience here at ASU, each of those donors and each of those sponsors wants to put their own unique spin on essentially what is a pretty standard, array of activities that need to happen. So that's why these competitions can, even within a singular university or even a single campus, can get siloed very quickly based on, again, donor intent and in some cases donor or sponsor ego. And we're no strangers to that ourselves either. So don't want to throw anybody under the bus here. And then the last thing that we've noticed here with our competitions at ASU is once you award that prize money to 1, 5, 10, even 100 startups that might make it through the competition gauntlet, then you have the equally difficult task of developing those entrepreneurs, helping them leverage the funding and in-kind support in a thoughtful way so that they can move the needle on economic and societal impact. So those are some of the challenges that we've ourselves found. And again, I'd be curious if any of you have felt these same pain points affiliated with competitions on campus with an eye towards startup or venture development. Second model that has been around probably the longest here, so chronologically we're a little bit out of order because I think incubators have been on the scene longer than competitions have been in vogue for the most part. But incubators as by definition, again, just pulling some of the more standard, I know a lot of different organizations, universities and colleges might use some of these terms interchangeably, but being a member of this community of practice for many years now, I think incubators tend to be organizationally orchestrated and in many cases subsidized. So you often find incubators affiliated with tech parks, so labs that want to incubate a technology transfer commercialization play, or incubators that are focused on a particular vertical in some cases. But generally, when I hear the term incubator, and a lot of my colleagues around the country, when we talk about incubators, those tend to conjure up images of, I don't know, don't take this the wrong way, but like the 90s, so incubators became en vogue in the 90s and the 2000s along with the tech parks. And so not that any of those things are bad, it's just there's a pivot that happened, and we'll get into this next, with acceleration becoming en vogue a few years back. So the other thing, space-centric becomes an issue oftentimes because space, of course, is one key ingredient to doing venture development. It's a very important piece of the puzzle for many startups, especially those that are in hardware or biotech. So that's sometimes can be a challenge as a model, and using that as a benchmark for developing programs within higher ed. And then finally, incubators tend by definition to incubate over a period of time to allow those hard tech or those longer term ventures to develop. And so just extending out that relationship can cause some challenges as it relates to just even interpersonal relationships between the founding teams, the mentors, and the administrators of these incubation programs, can really kind of cloud oftentimes the judgment of very high stakes decisions that need to be made in terms of no or go or no go decisions with strategy and so on and so forth. So that's the incubator model. Of course, most of us have an incubator on campus or are at least aware of some of these. And being in higher ed, this is a model that we want to consider as we're doing venture development. And then finally, very recently, and I think there's a fourth model I'll talk about briefly, a studio model, but the acceleration model really was, I think, maybe certain VCs, venture capitalists and angels and others perhaps getting frustrated with the long-term nature of incubators and how complacency might be bred in an incubation type setting. So the VCs stepped in and said, hey, we're gonna create, we're gonna add our own value on top of our investments by creating our own little fast-paced incubator. And so obviously many of you know the gold standard brands in this space, whether it be Y Combinator, Techstars, or now hundreds, if not thousands, that have popped up in the U.S. and globally. So here at ASU, we rode that wave as well back in 2010, 2011, even going into 2013, 14. So positioning ourselves as wanting to learn from these very thoughtful investors and how they've set up these acceleration environments for their investments. And one of the things I'll say is kind of a lesson learned in hindsight is we're in higher ed, we're not investors, right? We can have an investment mindset, but in terms of serving our constituents, that's the students and the faculty and the alumni and everybody else, the accelerator model definitely has some drawbacks, chiefly among those being the exclusivity aspect of that and the inability to scale this type of model in a way that works within higher ed. Of course, there's scaled accelerators that exist nationally and globally, but the other thing too is being at a Research One institution as I am here at ASU and many of you might be as well. Being specific, and again, the key ingredient of any accelerator is strong mentorship. So the mentors are there to help correct, neophyte founders from going down a rabbit hole here, there, or otherwise. So, to get that really strong mentorship model in place for an accelerator, you have to be pretty specific in terms of your industry or your sector or even your geography that you're located in, because for the 10x return to come to the VC or the angel, you've got to have the best of the best coaching up these early stage entrepreneurs. So, the last thing here, being elite, there's always, it's competitive. It's just like the marketplace. Like if you're going to make an investment in a team of entrepreneurs, give them funding, give them mentorship, in some cases give them space, you don't want to be wasting those valuable resources on those that are just not ready or not the right fit for the acceleration program. So there is a great deal of cutoff when it comes to providing accelerator models to practitioners. So within higher ed, having such that drastic cutoff, it's really hard for somebody like me that runs these types of programs to send those rejection notices to some very inspired young people in many cases. So very quickly, before I wrap up this piece of just kind of setting the historical stage, I will say a lot of the accelerators we're seeing out in the marketplace are even taking this de-risking approach a step further and creating studio models where they're taking some very talented people that want to be entrepreneurs and surrounding them with other ninja skills to essentially build a very viable solution addressing a equally viable pain point within a market. So it's almost like a startup manufacturing facility. So we've of course kept a close eye on the studio model as well, but because it still is, I would say, still emerging to a certain extent, we haven't fully experimented with that model. We're certainly considering that here at ASU. I left that off of our kind of our literature review of venture development models here. So what I want to share with you in the coming videos here, I've got 3 more to kind of walk you through the problem solution experiments we've done in the realm of creating a new venture development model. It's not new, it's just piecemealing things, making connections with the hard work that all of you are already doing out there. So there's 3 kind of key components that we've brought to bear. We want to bring down the barriers of entry. And again, this is a testament to us being in higher ed. So if we're going to develop ventures, we want anybody that wants to do a venture, we want to bring them in, right? We want to help develop them. And then this is the second point, longitudinally, right? It takes practice. We now know that the most successful entrepreneurs statistically speaking, are not in their 20s, right? So this is going to take time for them to really cycle through the process of build, measure, learn, building prototypes, experiments, even wrapping their minds around what it takes to all the hard work necessary. So if you want to play the sport of entrepreneurship and you want to develop a venture in earnest, oftentimes above and beyond your classes and your friends and your student experience, that's going to require a lot of time, a lot of energy. And if you want to play that sport, we want you to come in, and then we're going to give you an iterative process to work through that as long as it's going to take you. And again, we'll get into some of the risks involved with setting up that sort of model, but I'm going to make the argument that the outcomes are going to far outweigh the risks involved. And then finally, any sort of developmental process is there's going to need to be KPIs set up and metrics, and no better metrics out there than the free market, right? So we want to set up a competitive process that mirrors what's going to happen outside in the real world. So yeah, we're in a nurturing environment. We're the ivory tower. We're higher education, but that doesn't mean we need to create some fantasy world that these student or faculty entrepreneurs are invited to participate in. We want to basically do our best to mirror what the free market is demanding, and those that run for-profit accelerators, what they look for, and investors and others that are helping to entrepreneurial teams cross the chasm to get to ultimate product market fit and a repeatable, scalable business model. So these are very high level, three of the key design imperatives of what I'm coining. I have no better term, so if you can help me rename this, I'm all ears. But a venture development league model. And the league model terminology will make sense as we get more into the nuts and bolts of how each one of these key features plays out when applied to an entire student body. So if you don't mind, jump in. Let's see if we can talk through this. And I'm really anxious to hear any ideas that you might want to share with this Frankenstein approach to developing ventures in higher education. Let's do it.